give a warm welcome to the hosts of
The Bride of
Alternate Ending.
Beep boop. Loading. Hello, ghouls and goblins. I am your AI Hungarian host, Ghost Brennan Klein of Bride of Alternate Ending. And beep boop. Welcome to co-ghost Team Brayton.
Brennan, you sound like Boris Badenov pretending to be supercomputer to catch moose and squirrel.
Thank you. That's not what I was going for, but I figured pretending to be the AI Hungarian accents from The Brutalist, a movie that I have not seen, would favor my approach to accent work.
I mean, it was a beautiful thing, and I forgot about that controversy, but I still thank you for reminding us of why we're all here.
I will explain what just happened, which is that we are continuing our mission to dig horror movie skeletons out of the closets of award season nominees. Last month we had to kind of slum it a little bit and go with the Golden Globes nominations because the Oscars kept getting delayed. But Oscar nominations are out as voted by the members of our Patreon. We are going to be looking at an Adrien Brody horror movie because he's one of the few people nominated for the Brutalist. And yeah, you saw it, you liked it, The Brutalist.
I liked it, and it's the kind of thing that I liked where I can, with placid confidence and utter spiritual serenity, guarantee that you won't like it whatsoever.
Oh, of course. I mean, I both will not like it and I will not see it. That is a 3.5 hour movie.
All right. I mean, if you're not the kind of person who tries to see every film nominated in every competitive category at the Oscar, I guess that's okay.
No, I don't do that. And the one year I actively sought to and accomplished seeing all of the Best Picture nominees was the year the Darkest Hour was nominated. So I stopped doing that.
Well, that's the sort of thing that'll teach you to stop doing that for sure.
Yeah. I did. So I've seen a fair amount of the nominated movies this year. And when the nominations actually got announced, I was like, the only thing I felt compelled to actually watch that I hadn't seen was Conclave, and I've done that. So I feel pretty good about myself.
All right, love that. Meanwhile, I watched the Elton John documentary for Disney Plus made by Elton John's husband. To see the song play during the end credits. So we all have our different paths through life.
We do. See, I'm going to watch the music videos for all of the songs on YouTube so I can properly prepare myself. But yeah, I'm not that much of it. I'm not that committed. Also, okay, so I saw you have we'll talk about this movie in a minute. I saw a list on Letterboxd that you posted about you ranked the Diane Warren nominated movies based on how much you liked the song.
Yes.
I've only really become familiar with Diane Warren's output in the last 5 to 7 years of those nominated songs.
Okay.
Has she written a good song?
I mean, I think a couple of those 90s power ballads are close enough to being good that I am willing to pretend. Like the Celine Dion song for the movie about journalism. The movie's up close and personal. The song is Because You Loved Me. I think.
Was that the I Am Everything I Am Because You Loved Me?
Yes, that is the song.
Okay.
Is that a well-written song? I feel it would be a lie to say that the answer is yes. It is a song that when it comes on the intercom at the JCPenney's in 1999, you're probably happier than whatever was playing on the intercom a moment ago.
Yeah, okay. I hear that. But I just feel like everything she gets nominated for right now is just the most treacly bullshit.
Well, there's that. Also, she's only been nominated for one song that she has reorchestrated 17 times, sometimes with slight genre elements to it. So, like,
yes,
she'll add a few, like, Latin instruments and call it a Latin song, and then it becomes the Cheetos movie song.
Yes, okay. That is how I feel. And there is one of my favorite, like, surly pop artists is Kesha, and she performed a song for this Diane Warren documentary, and it's easily one of Kesha's bottom 5 songs because it's involved with Diane Warren.
I will say the non-movie reason that Diane Warren is a force in nature, and she became a movie person because of this. She holds the record for the most songs simultaneously in the U.S. top 10 written by a single person.
Ooh, that is interesting.
And that number is either 4 or 6. I do not remember what that number is, but she was a powerhouse in the 80s and early 90s.
I will have to look into her before I cast judgment, because this is later period.
Cast away, because nothing you'll learn will make you like her. But she is an interesting person. Very clearly, like, high-functioning autistic, and her songwriting practice is basically to get a commission, lock herself in her bedroom, not be seen for 3 days, and come out with a song.
Wow. Okay. That sounds interesting.
Also, no other human being has ever been allowed into that bedroom besides herself.
Oh.
And apparently, when you see inside it, apparently it's like floor to ceiling with, like, paper.
Oh. Like she's in prison, like marking the walls.
Something.
Yeah, like she's in the number 23. I imagine that happens in the number 23.
It's a movie. I hadn't thought of that movie in ages. Hopefully Jim Carrey gets nominated for something one of these days so we can do that. That's Jim Carrey, right?
Yeah, yeah. I never saw it either.
No, I saw it. I just don't remember it.
Oh, okay, yeah. Sorry, yes. I've been incredibly distracted. We are here to talk about the 2009 movie Splice, directed by Vincenzo Natali, the director of Cube.
Yep.
I was excited about that. It's also a deeply Canadian movie.
It's
because
Canadian as all shit.
Mm-hmm.
Although Vincenzo Natali is not. He is actually from Michigan, which is one of the 3 Canadas of the U.S., to be fair.
He's from where? What was that?
Detroit, Michigan.
Oh, sorry. You said I think Zoom cut off, and I just heard like Shigan, and I was like, "The fucker? Where is that? Somewhere in Denmark? I don't know." But yeah, so I did not realize that, but he has made a lot of movies in Canada, and
it also co-stars Sarah Polley, who is like the first lady of Canadian cinema. So
yeah, that's true. But that also made it feel like another kind of like Oscar skeleton thing, because she made that movie Women Talking.
Yep.
And so it was kind of fun to watch both of them in this Dark Castle motion picture. If you don't remember what Dark Castle is, that's the company that was, I think co-founded by Joel Silver, the producer, among other people. I think Robert Zemeckis was involved, perhaps. I should have looked this up.
I do not recall that, but that seems entirely plausible.
Yeah, but they started in the late 90s, early 2000s. You're looking at a lot of remakes of William Castle movies and just kind of 50s horror. You have the House on Haunted Hill remake, the 13 Ghosts remake. They made originals also like Gothica. They also made, the same year as Splice, they had Orphan come out, and what a double feature that would be.
Mm-hmm.
So it is not necessarily a storied filmography, but it's certainly. Oh, I think they made Ghost Ship too. So
I think you're right.
Yeah, a lot of like kind of glossy, stupid horror movies of the early 2000s.
Which God bless, because that is what we're here for.
Yes,
some glossy, stupid horror, and I think also certainly gives this the aura of being a skeleton, even though I recall it being vaguely respectable when it came out in 2010.
Yeah, I don't recall it coming out. I would have been in high school when it came out, and it missed me. I never saw it. This is my first time seeing it. It's a movie that I'm aware of the poster, but can't recall ever having seen it in person. Like, I think as I got into horror, I just kind of saw it on lists and things like that. So I don't recall how it would have felt at the time, but it feels like this. It's actually this, to me watching it, it feels like this fairly low class, like grody piece of exploitation that's just well mounted.
That's the thing. It is a filthy souled movie, which I did see it when it was in theaters. And I didn't remember anything about it other than that I did see it and that it had the 2 leads that it has. Have we mentioned yet that Adrien Brody is in it? I don't think I've heard his name crop up.
I meant we're watching it because of the Brutalist nomination, so we at least brought it up before bringing up Sarah Polley.
That's true. So there we go. But yeah, so I remembered they were both in it. I remembered the makeup effects, and I didn't remember any other thing about it. Reading my review from 2010, back when I was more of a prude and a square, it reads like someone who had a really enjoyable time but felt like I needed to apologize for that fact because the movie was so just vile-hearted.
Yeah. I read the first paragraph of your review because I didn't want it to... I was just a little curious, but I didn't want it to color me coming into this conversation too much. And I felt that very much. So I was very curious if your opinions have changed. And I guess maybe we'll put a pin in that and talk about the plot really quick, but I really want to know. But yes, really quick. So Adrien Brody and Sarah Polley play a duo of scientists who is also a romantic couple. They are working on this really inexplicable science experiment where they create new organisms so they can make proteins to cure diseases or something. Which is certainly something that can happen when you make a mated pair of little like wormy blob monsters.
Yeah, there's some sort of like tardigrades the size of fox terriers or something. It's very unclear what they've made or why, but they wriggle and they fuck. These things
they sure do. And they also fight with their little stinger, like retractable stingers.
Yes.
And change sex. It's all very exciting. We're gonna be spoiling this movie, by the way, so I don't know. Get ready for that. But anyway, so Sarah Polley really wants to blend this monster DNA with human DNA and just kind of see what happens. She wants to fuck around and find out. And reader, she does.
She does all of what you just said in every possible iteration of those words.
Yeah, she sure does. But anyway, she mixes it with human DNA after the program funder was like, don't do that. We're shutting it down other than harvesting these proteins. And so then she does this, and Adrien Brody's kind of into that, but then she starts incubating an infant with this DNA mutant, and he does not like that. He's in fact locked out of the lab while she is doing this. Mm-hmm. And they develop this like egg sac that's developing, or no, it's like a placenta sac kind of thing that's developing way too quickly. It is showing signs of violence. Her hand gets trapped in it at one point. And then they release it, and then this little baby groblin comes out. It is, what does it look like to you? Like at first?
I mean, I think at first it does a good job of tapping into so the famously all vertebrate embryos look alike, right? This is something we see on little fun facts and listicles and whatnot. A horse embryo looks like a human embryo, looks like a fish embryo, looks like etc. I think it does a good job of not looking like that. It looks like that embryo has gotten fucked up.
Yeah.
Which is what it is. But it's like it has these sort of like universality of an embryo, but like its bits are proportioned wrong, and it has like creases and lines where it shouldn't have creases and lines. So it's kind of like a freaky deaky prune embryo with limbs.
Yeah, it's kind of like, okay, so what if the Star Child from 2001: A Space Odyssey was mixed with like a velociraptor and a classic kind of like gray alien and Alita Battle Angel?
That's a good... I mean, that gets us to where we need to be, I think, for sure.
Yeah, its eyes are very far apart and remain so.
And I think before we go too much farther into this film, it is worth shouting out a couple names, because there are some names that deserve a shout out here. The makeup effects in this movie, which are the star of the show. We're here to talk about Adrien Brody, but the makeup effects are the star of the show. Howard Berger and Greg Nicotero were the makeup and creature effects builders, and Amro Atia was the creature designer. So those
these are
three
important.
people are the reason Splice is what it is, and I just want to make sure we said their names out loud before we got too deep into the podcast.
Yeah, and Nicotero and Berger especially, they are icons of the craft at this point.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Nicotero's become very involved in The Walking Dead, and that's kind of where his bread is buttered these days. But they were part of the company K&B. Basically, effects from the late 80s through now are the good ones generally have been touched by them in some way.
Right.
And I believe Nicotero was an acolyte of Tom Savini very, very early in his career.
I think you have that correct.
But yeah, no, they tend to make some of the more exciting things that you will encounter in modern horror, and that's this is certainly among them. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I mean, this is a mix of makeup and CGI. Like, they use CGI to separate her eyes, just like in Alita Battle Angel. They didn't make them huge anime eyes, but it's kind of a similar bizarre effect, but actually working towards the feeling of horror in a way that Alita is not aiming for. But yeah, so this fetus monster begins to develop very quickly. It begins to grow at a rapid pace. It begins to become more and more intelligent. It begins to develop. It begins to turn more and more into a almost female, almost human kind of figure, but very much not. And at the same time, it has, I believe, hands for feet, and it still has kind of bird-like, like kind of backwards ankles, or maybe like a dog.
Dog feels better to me than birds, but yes,
yeah.
You're the point being.
Yeah. Oh, and of course it has
all the limbs. It's just they're not right.
Yeah, and it has a long fleshy tail with a stinger on the end of it, like a scorpion, like a naked mole rat scorpion.
Yes.
Yeah, no, it's fucked up as hell, and she begins to develop other things as well. She becomes named Dren, and that's what we shall call her. And things get really fucked up. Basically, mild spoiler alert, it turns out that Sarah Polley has used her own DNA to create this monster, and it kind of becomes a stand-in for the child that Adrien Brody wants, that she claims that she doesn't, but she becomes very maternally attached to it instantly in a way that he finds repulsive.
It is a movie that has unbelievably clear feelings about mothers, is how I would describe this film. Sarah Polley wants to have become a mother, but is very clearly not interested in pregnancy. And in a way, the creation of this thing is a manifestation of that.
Yeah, very much. And it's also a manifestation of a cycle of abuse, because her mother was clearly a problem.
Mm-hmm.
We only get little glimpses into her life, but we learn that she was not allowed to have a Barbie doll. She had to hide her beloved Barbie. And also, when they bring Dren, they hide her from the lab. They bring her to this isolated farmhouse to put her in the barn. But the house, it's the house that Sarah Polley grew up in, and her bedroom is just this like mattress on the floor. It looks like what I imagine a room in the number 23 would look like.
It's one of the film's best dark jokes, which is that they go into the bedroom and Adrien Brody makes some comment on, wow, they must have really taken a lot out of this room since you lived here. And she's like, no. Yeah,
he's like, I thought you said your mom kept it the way it was when you were living here. And she's like, she did. It's obviously there is a really intense relationship that was going on there. And she is trying to be a mother, but finds herself inevitably falling into this kind of jealousy, hatred, fear of her own daughter monster situation.
She wants to be a mother, but she's also a Frankenstein, and you can't be both of those things.
Yeah, no, you really can't. And this is happening as Adrien Brody is warming to the monster. Spoiler alert, both as a father figure and as a lover.
And how?
Look, the number one rule of science is never, ever, under any circumstances, fuck the monster, and he ignores that rule. In one of the better scenes of the movie.
It is. We'll get to talking about like nitty gritty, but it is a movie that starts piling up its better scenes as it rolls through the second half, which I like. I appreciate a film that keeps its big guns.
Yes, very much. And I completely agree. It did take me a little while to really get on the movie's wavelength, but even from the beginning, we are fucking around with these little tardigrade monsters. Like, they're just having a good time from the beginning, but things get bigger and gnarlier and it's wetter as it goes along.
It's never not a horror film, but it seems to be at least a slightly glossy horror film for a while. And then at a certain point, it's like, what if we just became like Euro trash? What if we just do that for a little while? And then that's where the movie takes us. And it's a pretty wild shift because it's so Canadian, and I at least don't think of Canadian art as being like sordid. And it stars two people who are both like art actors, right? Like Sarah Polley, this is her second to last screen credit before she completely retired from acting to direct. She is someone who's associated with like the toniest, best, most like thoughtful art cinema in Canada. So like initially, I think during that slower opening stretch, the movie's kind of lulling you into this feeling of like, no, this is going to be respectable. And then it's like, haha, blood, tits, naked monster, sex object lady.
Yeah, it's really wild. It is so like crass and exploitative in a way that it felt refreshing to me. It's not what you expect from 2009. Really.
No,
and certainly not a movie that looks this way.
Mm-hmm.
And it really just went for it and kept going.
And we'll dig into that for sure because there's a lot to dig in there.
We'll dig into that, but yes, I guess we will repose the question, and we'll, I assume, continue litigating this throughout the podcast. But have your feelings changed about this movie?
My star rating has not. I would say that I was at a 3.5 star, and I'm still at a 3.5 star, but a more positive 3.5 star.
Okay.
What has changed? You know, as I said, rereading that essay that I wrote in 2010, it's very much from the perspective of this is a morally outrageous film and we should feel a way about that. And now I'm like, this is a morally outrageous film, 5 stars, right? Like I have just, I think, a little bit more willing to say the movie works. The movie has some visceral kicks. It's nasty. It is a pretty... It is not a movie that is comfortable with women. It thinks that women are a problem in the world. And
no, yeah.
And you know, I have gone from being the sort of person who is willing to like say, well, that's obviously like art that is just blatantly misogynistic isn't something we should want a steady diet of, but as a little like a little candy every now and then, maybe some misogyny as a treat, as the internet might say. It's so fearlessly sorted, and I love that.
Yeah, I don't know. It's obviously like I don't agree with that thesis, but I think there's something about like art that is just like so cruel, and misogyny is cruelty. Like that's just what it is. But that works in the horror genre. Like you don't have to agree with the thesis because the point of horror is to repulse you.
Exactly. That's a great way of putting it.
So the fact that it is so cruel and so morally outrageous makes it work better as an entry in the genre.
Because I think one of the things that is a kind of universal is like bad moms feel uncomfortable, right? Piper Laurie in Carrie is like a canonical example, or Mrs. Bates in Psycho. And this is a movie entirely about how your mom will fuck you up. Sarah Polley's mom fucked her up, and now Sarah Polley is replicating that with her own sort of hideous, abominable simulacrum of a daughter.
Yeah, no, it is. And obviously, look, if you are sensitive to misogyny, and certainly if you are sensitive to sexual assault themes, then maybe this is not the movie for you, and that is completely okay.
Oh no, for sure. I would never tell someone they need to see this because it is important. It is grungy. It is nasty. But I have since 2010 become the kind of person who would not only see and rave about the movie Strip Nude for Your Killer. This is now the third out of 4 consecutive podcasts on alternateending.com where I have mentioned how much I got a kick out of Strip Nude for Your Killer. So I'm clearly into that whole let's just wallow, let's just go into the gutter and rub our dicks in it, right? Like
yeah, definitely. And it's interesting though, because it's very nasty, and it gets nastier and grubbier and grimier, and down to the last scene, which is just depressing.
Because spoiler alert, onto a spoiler alert, Dren ends up fucking both of her parents. Sarah Polley much more.
Yeah, Adrien Brody is extremely consensual, and Sarah Polley is extremely not.
Exactly.
But Sarah Polley does become pregnant with whatever that's going to be.
Whatever that's going to be. A 3/4 human at this point, based on the way we're going.
Yeah. But it's also, there are elements of the movie, certainly this happens a little more earlier on, where it's a little goofy. It's a little Sam Raimi at times.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Like there's this very silly looking, it's not a montage, but they're like doing science, and it's all sped up, and it's incredibly wacky. But there's a bit where when the toddler Dren is brought to the farmhouse, where she kind of scurries off and it leaves this kind of like high pitched wail, and it was very like kind of almost Looney Tunes.
It is, and I would extend that to. I don't want to claim the scene. Like I want to let us both have the scene to talk about. But the scene to me where the movie makes this pivot from it's dark and somewhat nasty and somewhat grody, but still ultimately like a respectable film about genetic ethics and gene splicing, into no, we're just here to watch trash. I think there's a specific scene where that twist happens, and it's when they present Fred and Ginger, their sort of lumpy tardigrades, to the investors meeting. I believe it's an investors meeting. And
something like that.
It goes wrong.
It sure does.
And so what we learn is that Ginger, the female blob, how do you tell? I don't know. They figured out a way. The female blob has spontaneously evolved into a male, like foreshadowing alert. And the male blobs fight each other, right? Like they have a sort of very, very refined threat detection system. So they use their spiny proboscis to just stab the fuck out of each other and basically turn their tank into an aquarium of blood.
Yeah, which then tumbles over and spills blood out onto the stage.
Onto the audience. That to me is the moment where the film is like, okay, here's what the film has now become. It is now this. Hope you enjoyed that, because you're not getting that anymore. You are now going to get 40 minutes of. And I did. I wanted it.
Yeah.
It gave it to me.
And that felt very Sam Raimi too.
That scene is played for comedy, is the thing.
Yeah, it's played for comedy. It is like if Daffy and Bugs are having a fight, basically.
Because there's this great moment where Sarah Polley is going on her like very polished and rehearsed, like the magic of science, the beauty of mating, and like the exact second she says some sort of thing about like, the
eternal love,
yeah. Like that's when they start just pounding at each other with their stingers. And it's clearly staged as a gag, and it's a gag that made me laugh out loud alone in my apartment. So hey.
Yeah, which is maybe the only way to watch Splice, but
I definitely I think it is at least willing to let you have that response. Like that's not working against the movie to find it funny. It's not like a comedy, but
no. I meant alone in your apartment.
I
the only way to watch
Splice. I see what you
mean. But yeah, my God, I got such a kick out of this movie. I was so surprised. I really didn't know what to expect at all. And it's kind of funny because I was like, oh, is this one of the ones where we fuck the monster, or where the monster's horny and hot? But I was like, no, I'm thinking of Species. But it turns out, and at the beginning of this movie, I was like, yeah, that's not this movie, and I was like, oh no, we're fucking the monster. Okay, yes, I was right.
I'm going to challenge you slightly. It is a movie where the monster is horny but not hot. I
Yeah,
think is the specific.
no, you're right. She's not like a succubus in the way that Species or like Under the Skin is.
She is hot in the way that I would expect a very particular kind of person's fetish art to be hot.
Yeah, because
I think she's meant to evoke the idea of someone thinks this is sexy, but it's not me. I think it's kind of what she's targeting, and I think she gets there.
Yeah, someone got something out of the scene where she's riding Adrien Brody and like her wings expand.
Right.
Like she is this like she does develop wings. There's nothing that Dren can't do, really. But let's since he's the reason we're here, let's talk about Adrien Brody.
Sure.
How do you feel about his performance, his character in general here?
I think the problem with his performance and his character is that I had a hard time paying attention to them because of his hair.
His hair is so bad. It's this greasy 2009 emo hair.
World historically bad emo hair. And this is what, 7 years after the Oscar for The Pianist. So his career high occurred, and then they didn't really seem to know what to do with him after that movie and after that Oscar win. So he kind of just bumbled around from project to project, sometimes getting lucky, sometimes not. And I feel like he is not doing anything he needs to be ashamed of other than, again, not fighting the hair and makeup department harder, because, boy, everything about it is wrong. It's clearly dyed. Like, it's not the color his hair is, although that could also be the color grading, who can say.
This is an extraordinarily color graded movie. It's very blue.
It is. Very blue movie. In all the senses. It's like... It's not just that it's stringy, it's that it looks like sort of stringy in these like failed spikes that almost resemble like a video game avatar's like plastic shell hair more than human hair.
Yeah, he could be in like a Final Fantasy PS2 game.
Something like that, yeah. So I'm saying the hair is a problem. And not just in the sense of like it's fun to make fun of hair, in that I was not looking at his face. I was looking at his hairline.
No, it's really it's gross, and also, I mean, it works for the character who's constantly wearing graphic tees with blazers over them, which is just so obnoxious.
Oh yeah, like both of the science characters are unpleasant to be around, and that's kind of the point.
Yeah, absolutely.
I will say that Brody does not fail the movie to me. He has performed every scene well enough to be a load-bearing element in that scene, but the way the script is configured, the interesting character is Sarah Polley, and Adrien Brody is not fighting that.
Yeah, he's mainly functional, and I don't think there's a moment where you're like, wow, this is an Oscar-winning actor. But yeah, he totally serves the movie, and you believe that he wants to fuck that monster, even though you don't. Most people would not.
And I feel like that's really the only actual challenge the film sets him, and he aces it, right? Like, he goes from being the voice of reason, we have to kill this freakish creature that's been made, to finding it sort of... And I think in a metaphor for fatherhood, in the same way the rest of the movie is a metaphor for motherhood, he doesn't want it, but he learns to love it. And he navigates that turn, and then he does successfully, I think, convince us at least that something has snapped in his brain's wiring that he now wants to fuck Dren. And that's really all he has to do, and he does it.
Yeah, and that is a really that arc has a lot of... There's a lot of curvature on that arc, and he does hit all of the right moments.
Yeah.
And it does, I mean, and this feels right for what we do here, which is, the skeletons in the closet, because it does feel so grody and grimy and gross, and you're watching the guy from the pianist and the brutalist doing this stuff, and that is exciting.
It absolutely feels like if he hadn't had the career arc he did, where he hooks up with Wes Anderson and starts getting like incredible roles in Wes Anderson films, brings him out of this trough, gets to a film where he is Oscar nominated, and at the point in time you and I are talking, seems pretty likely he's going to win it. It would absolutely feel like, oh, that poor guy. Remember when he had a promising career before he had to make movies like Splice? And now instead he's had this kind of weird U-shaped career, so it's hard to say what to do with the films in the bowl of the U. But it absolutely, this would 100% feel like where actors go to die is in movies like this.
Yeah. And speaking of the bowl in the U, this is around the same time that he made Predators.
Yeah.
Where he got as jacked as an Adrien Brody could possibly be to be the star of a Predator movie. And I actually quite like that movie. But it feels of a piece with this part of your career.
And in a way, not only feels of a piece with this part of his career, but in both cases, he's not slumming. Like sometimes these actors who've fallen on hard times have to do genre work to make ends meet. You can tell they're just like, I'm here for a paycheck. I hate myself. I hate everyone around me. He's trying. I actually think he's quite good in Predators, honestly.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, that is a film where being quite good has a ceiling and doesn't yield anything at all. But he's still trying to make sense of the character he's been handed. And I think he's doing that in this film as well. I do actually think I like him better in Predators, which is a weird sort of thing to hold in my head. But no, he's not giving up. And again, he rallies, right? He's in the Darjeeling Limited right around the same time, so he's already met Wes Anderson by this point. And then yada yada yada, and we get real movies down the line.
Yeah, he's not phoning it in. He's putting that gooey scalpel in his mouth and doing stuff, and it's fun. But you're right. He does pale next to Sarah Polley, both in terms of her weight in the narrative, but also I think Sarah Polley's doing a lot of really good work here, too.
Sarah Polley has always been an actor I've really loved seeing in things. I'm glad she found that directing was a thing she loved doing. I wish she gets to do it more often. I wish she did it with better projects than Women Talking. But I regretted when she retired. And I guess, as I said, this is her second to last acting credit ever. Because I think
there may be a reason for that.
I think she is. I think she's phenomenal, though.
Yeah, no, she's phenomenal. And I mean, it's fun because she does get to let her Canadian accent just fly in this movie. Because they're kind of being an anywhere, any town kind of thing. But everyone's Canadian except for Adrien Brody.
Yep.
I believe including the guy playing his brother, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, I will say if there's one just unambiguous flaw, it's that I don't buy them as brothers. They don't seem to have a pre-existing relationship. So when the plot requires Adrien Brody to freak out that his brother is dead, I had sort of forgotten that was the relationship those characters are supposed to have.
Yeah, no, I agree, except like the supporting cast is so not important to this movie.
They are so not. The imperious looking woman with possibly a Quebecois accent who seems to in some way control the money, she's good. She is the supporting character who I'm like, you're good. And is that the performance, or is that the accent, or is that just the way she's been lit? Because she has this wonderful side lighting in most of her appearances.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit from column A, a little bit from column B. But yeah, so sorry, back to Sarah Polley. The part where she gets her hand kind of trapped in the placenta sac thing that maybe has teeth. Like, it's unclear exactly how it has latched onto her. But that moment, I felt her pain and terror. And it's such a small moment in this movie that goes to much bigger places. But that scene, I was like, oh, she's acting the fuck out of this. Like, I feel the physical nature. I'm pulled into what's going on in this scene that could have just been a, like, kind of goofy getting things rolling scene. But I think she's really good in this.
I think she is, too. And, I am now going on, 15-year-old memories, so don't trust me. But my sense, I think at the time, like, when she made that decision to retire from acting and just focus on directing, I think part of the logic that she talked about in the press was like, I'm hitting the point in my career where I'm only getting movies like Splice, and I just don't want to keep doing that. So my sense at the time, at least, was that she felt the project was not good, or at least was sort of very low rent, in a way that she was vaguely embarrassed to be associated with. But she's also not playing down to the material, and in fact, she's really bringing life to it. Like, she's, again, the sort of Piper Laurie all moms are psychopaths energy the movie has, she's working that. She's making herself seem hormonal and weird and unpredictable, and someone who, if you were, I don't think they're married, I think they're just domestic partners.
I believe so.
This is someone you would be concerned about sharing your home with.
Yes, absolutely. But yeah, and maybe maybe I assume that's part of why projects like this probably take a lot out of you if you're really committing to them.
I bet.
But yeah, what a movie. Sorry, I'm kind of scanning through my notes trying to figure out what the fuck. Since we're talking about Sarah Polley, her arc I think comes to a head in this really horrifying scene where she straps Dren down and does surgery on her to remove her stinger, which is played out as this very vindictive thing, because obviously she's partially afraid of Dren because Dren has just used the stinger to kill a cat out of pettiness for the cat being taken away from her in the first place, and then being given back, as if Sarah Polley can control Dren. But yeah, so Sarah Polley is partially like, I need to remove the stinger for everyone's safety, but also doing it to punish Dren. And it is a brutal, intense, grotesque scene that it's another one that's just really effective horror because you feel for Dren. Dren is a Frankenstein monster, and as Frankenstein monsters usually are, they didn't ask to be here. They're just trying to understand the world and live in it. And Dren is a monster and does commit heinous acts, but is also basically just a baby still.
A baby whose genetic soup has basically been full of kill things triggers, so in a way she has no capacity to control her violence.
Yeah. So you feel for Dren, and this is where you really start to click with what Sarah Polley is, what's going on with her. It's a lot. It's a potent movie in a lot of different registers.
Yeah, I'm really glad you called out that specific scene, because I think everything about that sequence is just calibrated so well in such weird ways. Because the cat killing that sort of starts it off, because it's this weird arc, just not even in the movie, but in the scene where Sarah Polley gives her back the cat and does so in this very warm motherly register that we then retroactively are able to realize was in a way of a pose, right? Because she just turns it off, and there's not a fading, it's not like Sarah Polley feels maternal and we watch her sort of transition into fear. She just closes off and is now this sort of very frighteningly icy, frighteningly precise scientist talking about dissecting her daughter figure. And it's just so frightening just to watch that happen. Yeah. But also the cat killing itself is again weirdly played as dark comedy, because it happens so fast, and it's both upsetting but also kind of ludicrous when it happens. And that's I think part of what makes the whole sequence so weird, is that it's going from this warm scene to this weird dark comedy, but it's also we're watching a cat die and we see it happen on screen. So it gets that good trigger of we don't like seeing animal trauma in movies. So we're getting all of these weird cross purposes, emotional triggers being lumped on us. And I think it's a lot to deal with. And then by the time that Sarah Polley just kind of shuts everything down with that really cold performance, it feels like the scene has been building towards something without even announcing it was building towards it. It just gets us there. And by the time we were there, it feels like it couldn't have gone anyplace else. I really like that scene a lot. It's possibly my second favorite thing in this movie after the Aquarium of Blood scene, which is far and away the best thing in this film, I think.
I don't know. I'd be hard pressed to choose an absolute favorite. Aquarium of Blood, obviously top 3. It's such a good scene. Surgery scene is so good. But I also personally just really like when Adrien Brody is seduced by and seduces his daughter monster, and Sarah Polley walks in on them. Her reaction shot is really it's really something.
It's really great. It's staged in a really good way. There's actually a really great sort of visual signifier that it's coming, that Dren recognizes that she's in the room, and her tail stinger shoots up.
Yeah.
So again, threat detection. Really well staged. That the scene where she discovers the two of them. I will also say the assault scene, the rape scene later on, when Adrien Brody saves Sarah Pauli by spiking Dren with a large post of some kind. A good capper to like the sort of nasty filthiness of what has been building up to that point. A lot of the film is very good at being like visceral and weird and upsetting, I think.
Yeah, it is profoundly good at that thing. And if you don't want that thing, maybe don't watch Splice. But I really enjoyed it. I think we've covered a lot of it. I want to throw out a very random thing that I noticed though, which was like the credits kind of threw me off in a weird way because they intersperse the names of the cast with the names of the crew, and I don't think I've ever seen that before. Or I at least can't recall that happening.
It's clearly motivated by having the names of the cast be CGI elements. Like we're watching them as sort of like bumps emerging from the surfaces of some sort of protoplasmic matter.
Yeah.
They can sometimes be very hard to read, I thought. But
oh yeah, including the title card.
Including the title card. If I did not know that the lead actor's name was Adrien Brody, I think I would have struggled to figure out what his first name was. Brody I could get. Adrien was a trial to me. But no, I think it's a sort of tail wags the dog where they wanted to animate it in a certain way and have a sort of scan across the whatnot. But
yeah.
They then had to fit credits in where they could. So I think it's ungainly, but it works. It's a kind of weird hybrid. Right?
Yeah, it is.
But I do like the glumpy ugliness of seeing the names kind of emerge out of globules.
Yeah, it's kind of like I think Spider-Man, one of the Spider-Mans, the Sam Raimi ones, did a similar kind of thing. I think it's more on that level than that gross. I think we disagreed on this, but the Sweeney Todd kind of like CGI blood credits or whatever the hell was going on with that one. I think it's more effective.
I don't recall the point of our disagreement, what would have been, because when I don't have the movie right in front of my eyes, all I can think about is how dare you do that to the Ballad of Sweeney Todd. So
yeah, fair enough.
You
know. Is there anything else we haven't covered about this movie that you want to bring up?
There is a fun fact that I did notice in my review. I had already noticed it in my rewatch before I read the review. The main characters who we've been referring to exclusively as Sarah Pauli and Adrien Brody do have names. They're not just called Sarah and Adrien in the film.
Could have fooled me.
Their names are Elsa and Clive.
Oh.
Which, if it were one or the other, I'd be willing to say it's a coincidence. That it is both of them has to be a reference to Elsa Lanchester and Colin Clive from the Frankenstein movies.
That makes perfect sense. I didn't... Like, when you said Elsa, I was like, oh yeah, her character was called Elsa. I don't think I knew his name was Clive. That did not register with me.
Fair.
But no, you're totally right. That is definitely hearkening to the DNA of this movie.
Because it is a Frankenstein movie. We've been talking about it as almost every other possible thing, but it isn't. Its bones are Frankenstein movie. She is playing Dr. Frankenstein, character who wants to create something but is so sort of mentally broken from whatever that their act of creation itself becomes a further breaking of nature and of themselves. And I think it's a good Frankenstein movie, and I think doing a Frankenstein movie about genetic splicing in the 2000s feels like low-hanging fruit, but I'm not sure that anybody else did it. So kudos.
Yeah, and certainly not to whatever degree this was.
Certainly, if any other movie did it, it doesn't have the commitment to the freakishness and the violence and the just very exciting grunginess of it.
Yeah, and this movie cost a hell of a lot of money for a movie like this. It cost $30 million, which...
That is a hell of a lot of money.
Yeah, it did not make that money back. But... I'm thinking, like, if someone is doing a genetic splicing monster Frankenstein movie in the 2000s, other than Dark Castle, it's probably Charles Band, and it's going to be terrible, and it's going to be $200,000. But yeah, so the fact that we got this, I think, is a very magical thing. And it is, as I mentioned, a great double feature with Orphan if you want to watch some Dark Castle Electra Complex movies. What a time. What a time at the movies this was.
You know, I have to ponder, by the time this episode goes live, the answer will have long since been resolved on my Letterboxd feed. I feel like I might have talked myself up to 4 stars over the course of discussing this movie with you.
Oh, I can't wait to find out, because I was coasting at 3.5 stars for the first half of the movie, but it got to 8 stars by the end. I was just
8
fully
stars.
Oh, sorry, 4 whatever. 4 stars.
No, I get it.
Sorry, because I rate things personally on the same scale that you do, which is an out of 10 score, and then I translate it to stars for Letterboxd.
See, to me, my 10 score and my 5 score are actually subtly different. Like,
really?
I was thinking about this recently. Like a film like, yeah, I mean, basically there's a little bit more. I don't know. It's hard to characterize it, but like, this is a 7 out of 10 movie for sure, but it might be a 4-star movie. There's just a little flexibility there to me, and I think part of it is that I'm more withholding with 5 stars than I am with 10 out of 10.
That's really interesting, because I think of them as just a 1-to-1, because you can do half stars on the 5-star scale.
That's true, you can, and I don't know why I feel that way about them. Well, like the other thing would be like a 6 out of 10 movie can be a bad movie to me, but a 3 stars movie will always be a good movie to me. That's sort of probably the main break there.
Psychology's so interesting.
It is. Right? I also have a friend who uses Letterboxd where anything over 2 stars is a movie he enjoyed watching, and that just feels perverse to me.
Yeah. No, for me, I think a 3 stars, it is a movie that I did enjoy, but maybe would never watch again. Like, had some basic level of quality, and then a 2.5 is, I mean, that's probably the worst score you can give to a movie.
2.5 is by far the worst score you can give to a movie, because it's like, it didn't work, and also I wasn't interested enough to unpack why it didn't work.
Yeah. Unlike, okay, no, I was gonna get on another tangent. I will shrink that down by saying I just watched the Kiwi Kwan movie Love Hurts, which I expected to bottom out at 5 out of 10, and it hit a 3 out of 10. That movie was
your
woof.
review of that movie single-handedly killed a little bit of my interest in seeing it.
Oh yeah, it is. You're welcome. I mean, you're probably gonna. I don't know. This could be a movie that you entirely ignore, but you tend to watch whatever.
I do. Since we're talking star rating philosophy, I do want to go on a tangent of my own, though, which is to say, when I gave the movie Nickel Boys 2 stars, that was actually a way of respecting it, because I was going to give it 2.5, and I was like, no, 2.5 is the worst star rating, and this is too interesting in its failure to be that, so I will give it 2 stars as a way of dignifying it by not lumping it in with Conclave and Emilia Paris.
Yeah. Well, yeah. This has been a brutal Oscar season for you. But we should stop talking. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. This has been a blast. But yeah, you can find more of this show and other podcasts on the Alternate Ending Network, and reviews by me and Tim and columns and everything at alternateending.com. If you want to vote, like the people did to get us to watch Splice, please join the Patreon. Link to that is in the show notes. And up next week, we will be having our March preview, because it is the end of February. This is going to be the first of these new podcasts that I am the main host. It will not feature Tim.
I know.
Don't
you
be
are
scared.
giving me a vacation that I am looking forward to very much. So
yeah,
thank you, Brennan.
Tim has been a beautiful, like, powerful podcast workhorse this month, and we need to give him a little break. But yeah, I will be joined by some of our alternate ending contributors. They are, I believe, both people that you'll have been familiar with if you've been listening this month. And I can't wait. I love these preview episodes. March is going to be something. We will see. But yeah, until then, I don't know. Enjoy life. Bye-bye.
Bye.